Hello, everybody, and welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry. And all three of us are professional illustrators. And all three of us have worked for just about every major publisher in the business. Together, we've published somewhere between 50 and 100 books, and we've all taught illustration at universities.
Each week we come at you with a dynamic and engaging new topic in illustration. We battle it out. Sometimes we agree, most of the time we argue, but each time you will learn something new.
Very good, very good. All right, guys. We've got 3 hot questions.
Well, I have one question before we get to the hot questions.
Yeah.
Are we at the point where none of us are using any prompts for our intro? Do you guys have something up?
I wanted to use one, but I wasn't quick enough to pull it up.
Oh, so that was freestyle?
I freestyled it.
All right.
Nice.
We're
I had
making
no idea
progress,
if it was
you guys.
accurate or not.
It took 2.5 years for us to learn like 5 lines a piece.
I have memorized. I was going to say, Will, that's the best I think you've ever done it.
Yeah, it was so smooth and
wow.
flowy.
Very good.
Didn't overthink
Proud
it.
of you
I
guys.
should just wing everything from now on.
Chicken wing.
All right, so let's dig into it. I know we usually talk about what's been going on, but I don't think much has changed since last time.
Mm-mm.
So,
By the way, what is the criteria for a hot question?
a hot question: if there's stuff to talk about when it's answered. Yes or no questions, not hot. True or false, not hot.
Do you like making art?
True, false.
Yeah,
Multi-layered.
true or false. True.
Do you like good brushes?
Yeah, we don't do that. We don't do lukewarm questions. All right, the first question comes from Christy. And she says, do you have any advice on building a professional team around you? I hear you often mention teams of editors and art directors, etc., but I wouldn't have a clue how to even start deciding whether I need these or where to find them. Unfortunately, for this question, I live in Australia, so it may be different here, but even a general idea of where to start would be awesome. So I think Christy might just be a little bit misinformed when we do talk about, working on a book and our team that's working on it with us, of editors, art directors, things like that. That isn't a team that goes with you from project to project unless you are kind of exclusive to one publisher. But in all of our careers, we've kind of bounced around between publishers and projects and different kinds of things. So we don't ever work with the same art director or the same editor or the same graphic designer on the books, unless we go back to that same publishing house. And even then, it might be a different person assigned to work with us. But how do you guys understand that question when she says, how do you build that team around you? What does that spark in you?
Well, there's two. We on the podcast we talk about 2 different types of work. Really, we talk about commission work.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we also talk about gallery work sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
But then we also talk about personal projects that we maybe self-publish,
Mm-hmm.
and that could be a game or a book or whatever. And I think when I heard your question, I immediately think of the last one where
Right.
we're working on our own projects. But you're right. When we're working for a publisher, the team around you is pretty much the team that the publisher sets up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So do we want to talk about?
I think what she's really saying, what she's really asking is, how do I even find these people at all?
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, there's 2 ways I want to approach that, or 2, I guess, phases of answering this question. Number 1 is, if you're going a traditional route of working with a publisher, the team member that you're going to have control over is your agent. And that's someone that you're going to interview and they're going to interview you. And an interview is basically, maybe you post COVID, you go out to lunch, something like that, or it's a few phone calls. And you just kind of kick each other's tires and see, is this a person I can work with? Because your agent is going to be someone who's going to tell you what kind of work is people are asking for. They're going to be the person interfacing with the editor and trying to sell your work and working on that contract. And then once you get those jobs, the team that's assigned to that book, like we were saying, is usually from the publisher. So that's all you need to worry about there. And then as you get more experience and your career advances, you might hire an accountant, you might hire a lawyer to just accountant to handle all the money that's coming in, all those millions of royalty dollars streaming in through the mailbox, and then a lawyer to make sure that you're not taking advantage of. But so that's that side. I think on a personal level, so if you're doing a Kickstarter or if you're doing any sort of personal projects, things like that, then when you get to the level where you can't do things by yourself, that's when you start branching out and finding people to work with you. So let me ask you guys this. Do you have a team? If so, who are they and what do they do for you?
I have a team, I guess. I never thought about it in that way, but I do have a team. I've got a personal chef. That's first. That's how I stay so fit.
Great illustration
does
starts
Lisa know that you,
in the stomach.
Does she approve of that?
And I've got a driver.
Right. I mean, because you can't waste time driving. You should be drawing, right?
I'm drawing in the back there, in the back of my stretch limo with the glass up. Do not put the glass down. Driver will talk to you.
Lee's got the glass up in one hand. He's drawing in the other hand.
Not that glass, the glass between the driver and you.
Oh.
You can't have airspace.
No.
In between. They'll talk to you. They'll ask you what you think about the weather or something. No,
Right.
no, I do have a team around me. My wife Lisa has been involved in my business from the get-go, and she is amazing. She handles all the orders and mailings that have to go out from Etsy and from my personal website. And there's especially around Christmas time, that ends up being a daily run to the post office with multiple packages, multiple things, books and prints and cards and all this stuff. So she's been amazing. And then I have a literary agent as well, and that's for children's book stuff. I've kind of put the brakes on that for the next year or so, but I do have an agent when I decide to go back. And then I just hired my first assistant, and I'm just learning how to do that. And you'd think that would be an easy no-brainer, like the assistant just takes a bunch of stuff off the table for you, but it's hard because you have to actually train them on what to do, and I have to think about what she's going to do when she's here. And so I'm learning how to be a part of that team. I'm not a very good manager. I'm disorganized. I'll need to go pick up my son from school, and then I need to get these illustrations out, and then all of a sudden I realize she's going to be here in 30 minutes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to scramble and give her something to do and show her how to do it, which then takes time away from me. I think eventually when I'm at the Jake Parker level, the assistant just comes in the background and you look really pro because they're like scrolling for something on your shelf and they pull it off and then they slide out of frame. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, Lee brings up a great point, and that is your significant other, your partner, that person, regardless of what they of what their capabilities actually are, they're going to be some part of your career. Either they're going to be a support that makes it so that you can do your work, or they're going to actually help you in it. In Lee's case, Lisa handling orders and shipping things. In the case with Allison, like this last few months, she's like just handled all my emails, outside of very specific ones that I can handle. But chances are, if you emailed me in regards to Inktober question or anything like that, like the reply came from her. And sometimes she'll reply with their own name, and sometimes if it's from me, she'll say, "Hey, what do you think of this reply? Is that good?" I say, "Approved. You can put my name. You can put my name on that." But so you just want to make sure that the person you're partnered up with for life is someone who's on board with your career goals. And if that person doesn't understand what you do or isn't into it, it's just gonna be a source of friction. It's gonna make it harder. So I think that's step one: is make sure the person you decide to share your life with is cool with what you're doing or even helpful with it, right? Step two.
Can I before you get into step two, can I add just a little anecdote right there?
Yeah.
It's a little funny story that you signing the or giving the approval on the email that your wife writes. I get sometimes Lisa will come. She sets all the books up in front of me when I have to. We're going to mail a book. Somebody's ordered a book, and I sign them. And there's a little spot on our store and on Etsy where you say, "Oh, do you want a personal message?" Well, lately, for some reason, and let me know if this happens to you guys, I'm getting these messages that are incredibly personal from the person who bought the book going to the person receiving it. So I'm writing a letter like, "Tracy, it has been such a great 10 years with you." And then I sign my name.
Right.
It's really weird. I don't know what to do there.
From Jerry.
It's weird.
Yeah. I don't know do I sign their name? I don't know. It's really bizarre. So anyway, just a little side note.
Yeah.
What is step two?
Step two is getting an intern / assistant, like what you've got there. If you live close to any sort of art program at a university level, or even a good art program at a high school, it's a great resource to finding people who are wanting to make this a career, for them to want to learn firsthand what a professional illustrator does. And so I was, when I lived in Provo, BYU is right there, and they have a great illustration program, a great animation department, all that stuff. And they're always looking for students, looking for people that students will be able to go to and be taken under their wing, right? And that's just a perfect way to like ease into working with someone instead of like straight up having a person hired on for, 20 hours a week or 40 hours a week, and you're responsible for them. To have a student who can come in and do a few hours every week, and that usually for those two, you can work it out that they get student credit for that. There's some work on your part in that you need to fill out evaluation forms and do a review and things like that. But so I would look into that. If you're getting to the point where you cannot do everything that's on your plate, and there's just things on your to-do list that are being pushed back weeks upon weeks upon weeks. Basically anything that you're doing that a college student could do after 1 or 2 hours of training, you should hand that stuff off. Printing prints, packing them up, and shipping them. Updates to your website, prepping social media posts, like there's all kinds of stuff that you can hand off to it. And then as you work with them and as this understanding starts to happen, you could decide whether or not to bring them on as assistant. If they like working with you, you like working to them, then you could shift it into. If
it's for the school, is that a paid kind of thing too, or is that just credit?
So usually, this is how I always did it. Was it was usually 40 hours of work for a credit, and so I would work with them for the 40 hours for the student credit. They would get that for their class credit or whatever. And then after that, if I wanted to keep them on, then I would start paying them. And so now, at first it's like essentially they don't have to pay for that credit that they're getting at school because when they don't have to pay money, they're working for it. And then after that, it's some sort of agreed upon
So that could be worth more than you would pay them anyway if the school is an expensive school.
Yeah. So that's why it's usually a really good deal. And then paying them as assistant, you decide what works best. If it's if it's minimum wage, if it's a little bit more than minimum wage, something like that. And then I think step 3. So as an assistant, you can just build up hours as it works out. You can bring on a second assistant. You could have assistant that does just shipping and handling. You can have assistant that just works in your inbox and handles communication. You could do all those kind of things. And then I think step 3, and I haven't quite gotten to this point though. We've done this with SVS, is hiring on an employee. And with that, you want to make sure that you work with your accountant to figure out legally what you need to do as far as hiring on a person, what kind of taxes that you have to pay or withhold, or setting up some sort of bill pay with them, things like that. So usually an employee, I guess the distinction I would make between an assistant and employee, and there's different names for this. So assistant I see as someone being part-time. They're usually going to school full-time and they're putting in maximum 20 hours a week working for you. An employee is someone who works for you full-time and you're responsible for their, the majority of their income. So if you're at that point, you're doing really good. You're whatever it is you're making, it's bringing in a lot of money. So congratulations, and maybe we'll have you on this podcast to give better advice as to what to do there.
Can I weigh in on this a little bit?
Yeah, please. I was wondering if you were gonna ever say anything.
You were doing so well.
I know. I was talking too much.
Your flow. No, I concur with everything you've said, and I think that when I first started, I had no concept of doing anything but working with a publisher and their team. So it was always me by myself and the employer saying, well, this is who you're going to be working with. And when you get this finished, call this person or send this to this person. And it was all directed. And you develop those networks. And then later on, I worked on a few projects on my own and then I hired my brother-in-law or partnered with him to make some ebooks, and he was a programmer. Then the three of us started working together, and we became a team. So I have different compartments of teams and assistants, and it's a really neat thing, because the thing that I've realized more than anything else is I am only really good at a few things. I'm just not. My talent stack it's developed in some areas and less developed in others, and I can get by. And when I did the little book, I had the opportunity to design it myself. I mean, I knew what I wanted. I wanted one image per page, and I thought, well, there's no design work there. It's just an image on each page. But then as I started thinking about the front matter of the book and the forward and the afterward and all the text that goes on the book, I realized I'm not a graphic designer. And if I hire a graphic designer, then it's just going to look that much better. And it did.
Right.
So I found this woman named Marilee Nelson, who's just an amazing designer. I needed to get it edited. So I found Kim McPherson, who was actually one of our, who was taking classes at SVS. And she reached out to me. I was like, hey, do you have an editor? I've edited for Kaplan, McGraw-Hill, and
Perfect.
That's what I do. And we worked out in fact, I worked with her before that on the PDF for the children's book class. But so then I've kept these people and added people to them. So now I've got a marketing guy, Ian Nelson, and no relation to Marilee Nelson, and a printer who is kind of a broker, who now, Lee, looks like you're going to be working with her too. That's Lauren.
Yep.
And now I have an audiobook guy, Aaron, who I'm working with, who knows.
You doing an audiobook?
Yeah. And so just recently we put it out for audition and had 50 replies of people that were interested in reading my book.
Dude, you'd be the
my
best
latest one.
voice for that. These are the best of times. These are the most of
you know
times.
what's weird is we got the first guy that read, we got a sample from him and it was way too formal. And then we got 10 more samples from 10 different voice actors and narrowed it down to 4, and I couldn't pick. I'm like, I like them all. And you get to a point where I think you need to say, maybe I'm not even the right person to pick this, you know? What do I know? I'm not the user. I'm not the end user.
Is James
Someone
Earl
else.
Jones one of those people?
How'd you know? And then I have this guy Aaron now who's putting that whole thing together. I don't have to do anything for the audiobook. I have to pay more money. I have to pay money to these people, but they're going to make the product so much better that I'll end up making more money in the long run because the product isn't going to suffer quality. I'm not going to make dumb decisions. I'm not going to fumble around. I've got Wayne as my shipping guy for post Kickstarter campaign, who's going to do all the drop shipping for me. And that's really the way to set it up. I mean, it's scary at first because you're thinking to yourself, well, I'll save the money and do it myself.
Yeah.
In the long run, you're probably going to just ruin your product.
If you guys ever read that book called Deep Work, which me and Jake have both highly recommended, the idea there is opportunity cost. Everything that you say yes to means you say no to something else. And if you're saying yes to packaging a bunch of books together or prints, that's not a good use of your time at all. I want to speak to the everyman. That's my skill set and forte. You guys talk to the high end illustration career person, because I could hear a bunch of our listeners thinking, okay, this is great. This is really a conversation that's mid-level illustrator and up, where you're starting to
they need
accumulate
to hear
people.
advice too sometimes.
No, they absolutely do. But I speak for the everyman.
Okay.
It's just my thing. No, I think one of the best teams you can have around you early in your career and even when you're in school is really developing a good core group of peers where you can share techniques, you can share resources, you can even help each other out in this same way. If somebody has a big show coming up, hey, can I help you for a day? Can I help set up your booth? And I mean, that stuff goes a long way, and you can trade out that labor for free. And it gives you this just great resource to bounce, job specs off of, hey, this person wants to pay me this much for a book cover. Would you do it? And, you get this great, I had 7 people when I was in school that we had, just a weekly meeting. We'd all come together, we'd show work, but then we'd also talk about, oh, hey, here's where I got these postcards printed and the printing was terrible or the printing was great or whatever. And then we'd all kind of rose together.
That's cool. That would be like level 1 peers. Level 2 would be, your life partner, your spouse,
the people who are
girlfriend
forced to
or
work with
something.
you.
People are forced to be, get them going. They know how to type on a keyboard. No. Then the intern assistant, then the employee, and we didn't actually talk about. Well, Will actually got into there, but we didn't specifically call it. But like your partner, a business partner, essentially. And that's where you two are bringing something exclusive to the table. There's very little, maybe there's some overlap, but one person has a specialty or an expertise, the other person has the other one. And then you split the profits. It's going to be certain percentage goes to you, certain percentage goes to me, 50-50, whatever. And that's another team member, a part of your team, helping you to make manifest this vision that you have. So, all right, I feel like we answered that question.
Yep.
Good. Let's move on to the next one. This is from Josh. He says, I'm an aspiring digital artist. My goal is to become a full-time freelance illustrator to make a living with art. I'm reading this question too, and I'm thinking we may have answered this already in a podcast before, but If we have, apologies. We'll probably still have a different answer this time, so it doesn't matter.
Let's just contradict ourselves.
So he says his goal is to become a full-time freelance illustrator to make a living with art. What 5 major moves made the most difference for you in moving your art forward to the point that you can become a full-time artist?
Wow.
5
major moves. Yes, I've got my 5. I'll go ahead and go through those. And
Thanks for prepping us, by the way. We got to
can now
wing it.
scramble. Okay.
And while I'm doing that, you guys think of yours. It might be same, might be different. But number 1 move that I made was doing professional level work, even though it was for like my own jobs that I created. So work's not coming in. Nobody knows about my artwork. Nobody knows that I'm an artist. How am I supposed to get these jobs? How am I supposed to make a freelance career? Well, I'll give myself an assignment. And so what it started out for me doing was comic stories, short stories, 10 pages to 20 pages. And my goal was to make them as professional looking as, you know, what you'd see on a bookshelf, right? In a graphic novel. And that meant I got books on how to do comics. I learned how to letter. I studied, you know, other comics on storytelling, all those kinds of things. And I started making comics that were professional grade, you know, at least they looked that way in my eyes. And it seemed to be in others' eyes too, because it started to get noticed from the right people. So, so you decide what it is you want to get into and what you want to do and start making those things, even if it is your own assignment. So if you want to get into concept art for film or animation or video games, make up a video game and start doing, you know, a portfolio of concept art for that, right? Second thing was making a professional website. And that was... It was a way so that when people Googled my name, Jake Parker, that's what came up. And I started doing this before social media, but I think it's just as applicable now. You don't want someone, you know, searching for the type of artwork that you do and not being able to find you. And so a website, whether you're doing blog posts on it or you're adding artwork to it, and your about page, all that kind of stuff, it just makes it searchable. And anytime that you can on all your social media or whatever, just link back to your website. And so having a professional website is just carving out your own spot that you own on the internet that someone who's looking to hire you can go to. They can cut through all the posts on social media that don't matter and just see, okay, this is this person's work and here's their best stuff and here's what they're doing. So that's that. Number 3, I started treating social media as a job and not just as like a diversion. And so what that meant was planning out, okay, I'm going to post 5 days a week. On Mondays, it's going to be, it's going to be sketches. On Tuesday, it's going to be the final drawing. On Wednesdays, it's going to be, posting something that maybe it's not artwork, but it's something that I'm interested in or into. Thursday, it's going to be a throwback, so it's older work. And Friday, it's going to be fan art or something like that, And when I started treating social media like a job and taking it seriously and engaging people and responding to comments and all that stuff, my social media started to grow. People saw that I was, I think, more professional than just someone who's, casually posting whenever they want. Okay, number 4, what really helped me in my freelance career was kickstarting something, running a Kickstarter, and I kickstarted a book, because what you're doing there is you are responsible for everything from the start to the finish of a project. You are responsible for creating the idea, for selling it, for producing it, for delivering it, and all of that teaches you everything you need to know about what all the professionals are doing that you will be working with in the future, whether it's video games or publishing or anything like that. All those people are used to shipping products, right? And there's different departments that handle it. But when you take part in that, even if it's small, even if, 100 people back your project, you still learn a ton. You learn how to sell yourself. You learn how to make something look sellable and how to deliver a finished thing. So making some sort of finished product, kickstarting it, something like that. And then the last thing that of these 5 that are requested that made the difference in moving my art from, being amateur Jake to being professional Jake was starting an online shop. And really what it was taking, you could easily take the thing you kickstart or something smaller that isn't kickstarted and just putting it in your shop and selling it. And again, it teaches you some of the same things that the Kickstarter does, but it's a little bit more of a slow burn. Kickstarter happens all in, the span of 5 to 6 months, but a shop is, there for the entire year, for many years. And in order to keep it going, set yourself a goal that you're going to make a certain amount of money each week with it, or amount of money each month. You're going to start feeding it, and you're going to be doing things in your work that helps the shop look more professional and look, I guess, better represent what it is that you do as an illustrator. So those are my 5 things. You guys have anything you want to add to that?
I got 5.
I got 5. Go ahead, Lee. My 5 will cancel out your 5.
My 5 are really the 5 you're going to want to pay attention to. They're similar to what Jake was saying in the beginning, especially, but 5 very specific things. One of them was, as I was leaving school, junior, senior level, I started to drive the work to a very particular area of illustration. And I think the highlight there is when you're in school, you're taking so many different classes, you get pulled in all these different directions, and you really do at some point have to say, okay, this is where I'm going to go, and this is where the work needs to focus. And so that was a big deal for me. It's like drawing that line in the sand, like I'm going to do this. And, it happened to be children's book kind of stuff. And then once I had that track, number 2 for me was finding the people who need that kind of work. And so I'm creating something and then finding the market for it. And that needed to be really a specific group of people. So that comes to my number 3, which was advertise to those specific people. And I did that in a 2-tier approach. I had my top 100, and they got generalized mailings. And then I had my top 20, and they got custom-made, handmade stuff, expensive packages that I'd put, all handmade stuff. And those are the people that I really wanted to work with. And that made a huge, massive difference in my career. That one thing, those 20 people made the biggest difference because I tailored it to them. It wasn't just an email or a postcard. These were handmade books and stuff like that, even, with original drawings in there. And then once I advertised to those people and met with those people, I then came back to my studio, and the whole goal was changing out my work regularly and often. And so if it was at that point, my whole portfolio was changing like probably every 6 months. Every image would, every 6 months, all new. And that was a big deal to start to really understand media and kind of come up with my own quote unquote style. That happens when you're doing a bunch of work. And I didn't have a lot of client work coming in, so I had the freedom to, go through that a lot. And then lastly, once I had my target audience and my work, and I'm changing out my work and portfolios, things are starting to move forward, and they're moving forward slowly. I had a second and third option of making income while this slow burn was happening with children's book illustration. And that just speaks to having a good foundation. I did architectural rendering, and I taught portraiture and figure drawing for those first couple of years. And that really made the difference in providing a safety net while the children's book stuff kind of got going.
Cool.
Boom.
Cool.
5. Man, you knocked those out.
Yeah.
Will.
You did pretty good, Lee.
Thanks.
Okay. So I got 6 because I have
Ooh,
to.
ouch.
You know
Show
how
off
this is.
alert.
You know what? I'm not going to really spend a lot of time because you guys pretty much covered everything. I'm just going to reiterate. I think we have a lot of overlap. The first thing I did that was significant when I got out of school was I got scared because I wanted to be a freelancer and I didn't know what to do. So I set up lunch appointments with 3 of my teachers and went over with one guy, went over to his house and and just pick their brain. Like, what now? All the questions that should have been answered in school, which is why I wrote the book, What They Don't Teach in Art School.
Well, this is just a plug for your book.
No,
Shameless,
it's
shameless
not a plug.
drift.
No, forget I said that. See if you can wipe that out.
We'll edit that out.
Yeah, just edit that out.
Forget I ever mentioned what they didn't teach you in artschool.com.
Stop. If you stop saying what they don't teach you in art school, then people will be able to forget it. Okay. So setting up, basically networking was the first thing. Second one, I redid my portfolios. You talked about Lee. Completely redid what I had done in school. Gave myself assignments that looked like they could be for actual jobs, so that art directors would look at the work and say, "Oh, who was this for?" And or they didn't ask and they just thought it was for someone else. It had a student portfolio really looks like you're just barely out of school, and it looks like you haven't been working. You really want to create that illusion that you're getting work. I think. I made sure that I always was working on a project. If I didn't have a freelance assignment, I gave myself a freelance. I always had something. I had friends that when they didn't have any work, they just went off and played. And I'm like, I remember thinking, we suck as artists. We're not good enough to go have time to play right now. So the first 5 or 10 years, I really just put my head down and really worked. I didn't do a whole lot else. You don't have to do this as much today, but I spent a lot of money on advertising early on. But I think that the spending money, I had to spend thousands of dollars on ads for, in the source books, which are defunct now. We've got the internet. But in getting ready to spend thousands of dollars on my art, to advertise my art, I worked so hard to make the images that were going to go on those ads, because it really was putting my money where my mouth was,
That's a good point.
Today, you have, I hear students complaining about website costs, and I'm thinking, that's really cheap compared to where we were. One page ad in workbook was like $2,500, $3,000. Spread, I bought a spread a couple years in a row for about $6,500.
Wow.
You have to be making money to spend that. But it was a gamble. I mean, it hurt to send that money out and to hope that it came back. Well, and it did. But putting your money out there really forces you to focus and really forces you to commit. Getting a rep was, I really worked on sending images out and trying to attract a rep. I think that really had a big impact on my career, because when I did get one, I started getting a lot more work. So it really just expanded my income. And then the last one is prospecting for illustration in places that aren't necessarily obvious. There are a lot of places out there that will hire illustrators that I don't know about, that other people know about, that they're little secret clients, that they've gotten. And that comes through hard work. That comes through doing research online. I mean, putting feelers out there, swimming back upstream from a product. Where did this product come from? And where did the illustration come from for this product? And how did that illustrator get that job? Oh, it came through a design firm, and making phone calls and finding out how did this illustrator get this job? And who did they send their work to? I want to send my work to those people. That's hard to do, because you've got the little voice in your ear, the resistance voice saying, you're wasting your time. This is going to be, you could be watching TV right now. You could be playing video games, but instead you're on this wild goose chase trying to find clients. And it's a fight that is worth fighting. You have to silence that voice, but you have to get out there and find work where your friends are going to go, well, how in the world did you get that job? And you got it because you worked really hard to find it.
Do you, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have an example of a niche like that?
It's defunct right now, but yeah, I mean, the main story that I think of there was a friend of mine, John Barry, who's also an illustrator, and myself. We were looking for more magazines to work for, and the reason I say it's kind of defunct now is because magazines are pretty much all gone out. But there are other opportunities right now that would be just like this. But basically, I can't remember how we found it, but we stumbled across a source that they have in libraries called the SRDS. Have you guys ever heard of that?
Mm-mm.
So, and I can't remember exactly how we found it. Someone else mentioned it, and then we went researching. I know someone else told us about it, but what it is it's like remember the old telephone books, right? The telephone directories. It was like a telephone book printed on newsprint, and it was a bunch of them for anyone who wanted to advertise their product in newspaper, magazines, radio, TV, and there were a few other outlets. And the magazines were split into consumer magazines, trade magazines, and institutional magazines. And there was a book for each one of those. So there was a book for TV, a book for radio, a book for trade magazines, a book for, and we were really specifically interested in the trade magazines because then they had magazines like Hospice Magazine. Well, can you even imagine? There's a magazine for hospice, right?
Yeah.
And this book would tell you who the art director was and their phone number, who the publisher was, the circulation. It told you all the stats on how to contact them, so that you could say, "Hey, I want to buy an ad in your magazine or on TV or radio or whatever." And the subscription to this was updated every month. So every month you threw away all those books and you got another set, but it was $700 a month. So you couldn't afford it yourself.
So archaic.
It is, but libraries would pay this $700 a month subscription to SRDS. And we went there and we found this gold mine, and we couldn't believe it. We were like, so me and John Barry, we went in like 3 different Saturdays, and we didn't even have a laptop. We just hand wrote down art directors' names, the address, the name of the magazine, the art director's name and phone number, and the address. And we just spent hours doing this. And we ended up, we made search criteria that was, if it had circulation under 25,000, we eliminated it. And that was one of our big ones. But we just mailed to everybody. We got 500 names, 500 different magazines from doing that on like 3 different Saturdays. And we both were like, if this turns out to be a colossal waste of time, at least misery loves company. And we got to go out to lunch each time, and it turned out to be the opposite. We had so much work coming from those magazines. And the art directors would say, I just got a postcard from you. And I don't get postcards from any illustrators. So this is interesting. I've always had to go hunting after illustrators. And, but would you be interested in working for our magazine? And the reason we knew it worked so well that we were getting them from that was we were getting calls from the same art directors. So we were getting, on different months, we would get jobs from the same art directors.
Yeah.
And that's what really made, that launched me into the stratosphere as far as income. And I was doing 15 to 20 editorial illustrations a month for different magazines.
Wow.
That opportunity's gone, but there's others that have emerged, and where I hear of illustrators getting jobs from places, and I'm like, how in the world did you find that? So it really comes down to being aware, I think, and being innovative and not being afraid to ask. You can only be told no, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
no, that's incredible. It's illustrative of what kind of like outside of the box thinking can do for you, and also how things have changed.
Yeah.
But I bet there's millions of websites now,
Right.
and and some of them might have a budget.
Well, and there's
right?
tons of startup companies that are making games and making books and making all sorts of things that need illustrators. And my theory, though, now I see the opportunity, and we've talked about this a lot. I see a lot of the opportunity that has shifted into being able to hire yourself and make your own project. Like, we talked about in the last podcast, Lee's going to make this deck of tarot cards. And I've got this game that I'm working on. In fact, I'm making later today, I'm making multiple decks to give to different game groups that are going to do some testing for me.
Right.
And I want to test it.
Yeah. I'll send you a deck. If you guys will play it, I'll send you one.
Send me something.
Yeah. But yeah, I see a lot of the problem with some of the startups now is they really don't want to pay much. Now, that's not a problem if your expenses are low and you want to really get work and you want to cut your teeth on real projects. For me, I see some of the budgets that I'm being offered and I'm like, I have the money and I have the time to work on my own thing. So rather than work on your thing for this little amount of money, I'm just going to say no and work on my thing. But in the beginning, I would have jumped at the opportunity to work on some of these smaller projects. Yeah. Smaller, independent. They're not, I mean, at what point are you not an indie publisher? What makes you go from indie to an established company? I get calls from people sometimes who have a game company, but really they're just running it out of their house. But they do have titles and they're selling on Amazon and stuff. And anyway,
well, that leads me perfectly into this last question. If you guys are ready,
let's do it.
This comes from Michael. He says, "What are your views on being a contributor to the website Fiverr.com?" In parentheses and under Freelance Artist directory. Would you suggest this as a way to get experience? Are there pros and cons of either avoiding it or going ahead and being part of that community? And so I've got some answers, but I want to just throw that out to you guys. Have you guys ever had experience with Fiverr.com? I did a little research. There's solidgigs.com, there's upwork.com, there's freelancer.com, there's guru.com, and all of these are essentially different platforms where you make an account on there, you offer your services, and people who need that, searching for them, can hopefully hire you to do a job for them. But are you familiar with Fiverr? Do you know what it is?
I thought that was a sort of a race to the bottom. That was my impression of it, that it's like a lot of work for the absolute minimum, and you're basically just trying to undercut people.
Man, it's someone building building a birdhouse in the background there.
Dude, hold on. Maybe we come back to. I during the day, it's literally empty here, and I'm not kidding. There's like 10 people right outside our door, chatting.
Just chatting.
You can conjure an ambulance. You can conjure the lawn mowing crew. You can conjure.
It's amazing.
A neighbor
all you have
that
to do
wants
is
to beat
record
on
a
your
podcast.
Door. Yeah.
I mean, I swear to God, the last 2 months I could have recorded any day at any hour for the most part, except for on like Saturday morning, and I'd be fine. And then they're like wheeling product in and out.
Is
it the
Wayne
film
and
crew?
God.
Wayne and I used to say that whenever we'd go hiking, if we ever got lost in the wilderness, because we'd go way out there sometimes, if we ever got lost, all you'd have to do is need to use the bathroom and you'd produce a jogger out of nowhere.
Yeah.
That is so good. That is so good.
I think Fiverr's been around now, I want to say 5-10 years. I don't know. It's gone through phases, and I think now what it is you jobs start at $5, but then if you're the right person for the job, it goes up. You'll end up being paid more. There's tips. They encourage everybody to tip. So say you do get it for really cheap, they encourage, tip your guy $50 or $100. and so there's ways to make money where it's less taking advantage. But I'll run through my initial thoughts on this and then get your guys' thoughts. Number one, when you go through Fiverr, you make an account on there. I would say the pros for this are getting exposed to lots of different work opportunities. Like Will was saying, you don't know what's going to come down the pipeline. And apparently how Fiverr works, I myself have never used it, but just reading up on it, you make an account, the jobs come in, you're automatically hired and you're on the hook to do those jobs. So it might be someone, I need a logo design, I need a spot illustration, I need something like that. And so you have to deliver that in a certain amount of time, 24 hours, 40 hours, whatever the time is. And if you don't, you get lower feedback on that, which lowers your score for when people are looking for illustrators. It helps them decide if they want to go with you or not. So there's a lot of grinding. There's a lot of you're on the hook for stuff. You got to get in there and do it. But it seems like a really good way to get some experience and get some assignments. That's the pros. And I would say get some income. I mean, you do get paid. Those are the pros. The cons are you don't get paid much. Fiverr takes a 20% commission. That seems like if it's a $5 job, you did it for $4. Okay. If they tip you $100, you only get $80 of that. And from what I understand, Fiverr also only uses PayPal to transfer money, and so then you're also going to be paying PayPal fees as well, and that's usually 2-3%, something like that. So you're not going to be making a lot of money doing this. The other thing is you are at the mercy of Fiverr's guidelines. They're closed garden, I guess what it is when you are a community there, or when you're part of that community, there's rules that you can't contact people outside of Fiverr. You can't use Fiverr as a way to find jobs and then go off and do jobs with those people that aren't brokered through Fiverr. So that's something that just seems like almost a handicap to what you're already trying to do, which is a hard thing, and that's getting work, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that. And then once you are working, there's a lot of people who have said that Fiverr, that people can be hard to work with. So you might get an assignment, I need spot illustration of a girl with a balloon. And then you'll contact the person and say, okay, how old is the girl? What color is the balloon? They don't get back to you. You might have other questions. They won't get back to you. And then pretty soon the deadline's up and you didn't get any further feedback. So you don't know if the thing that you created is something that they wanted or something that's way off the mark. And that's going to affect your score on Fiverr, which is going to, make it so that you can't get as many jobs. There's problems with getting discovered on Fiverr, doing enough work to like build up. And I'm using Fiverr, but it seems like the same with all of these things. Essentially, I think your job as an illustrator is to build a business around your work that is independent of platforms. Mm-hmm. And I would say not just Fiverr, but even social media, even forums or places like ArtStation, things like that, so that if any one of these platforms, if one day Facebook is looking at the numbers and they're realizing, Instagram is actually losing us money now, we're just going to shut it down. January 1st, Instagram shuts down and you've got 20,000 Instagram followers on there. What are you going to, who's going to see your work after that? So, so try to build a platform for your business and for your customer acquisition that isn't solely dependent on any one of these platforms. No, that's kind of my overall advice with stuff like that.
Okay, here's mine
Okay.
on Fiverr. It's Fiverr or any of the others. It's that basically every one of us as artists have a number of bad paintings that we have to get out of us before we can start doing really good work.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I don't care how you do that, but you have a long road of bad work that you have to do. If you're not disciplined enough to give yourself assignments to get that bad work out,
Mm-hmm.
like all the time. There's so many people that will go online and say you should never work for Fiverr. But I think that they're, or work for substandard fees, but I think that they're not seeing the big picture. And the big picture is you've got to get a lot of work done.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get paid $5 or whatever it is for your work, and I know that on Fiverr you can make a lot more than $5. There's creative ways of pricing, of getting more money, but basically, you got to get that work out. So sure, get paid. The thing that it'll do is if you go on Fiverr and you get screwed over, or you end up working with bad clients, it'll help you to appreciate good clients too. You'll be able to, when I had a friend once who said, you should always figure out a way to say yes to your kids, because you could make it their problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they come to you to ask you for permission to do something. Yes. Like, can I don't know, can I go motorcycling with my friends, even though I've never been motorcycling before? Yes, if you buy your own health insurance, if you I don't know, but figure out a way to say it. So I'm trying to figure out a way to say yes to doing Fiverr, which is look at the upside, because everything we do in our career is a learning opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we learn from it.
Yeah.
But my biggest advice is you got to get that bad work out.
Yeah.
In fact, because we're getting ready to move, I have been going through my old paintings that I've been carrying around forever.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I move, I get rid of more of them,
Mm-hmm.
and there's just so much bad stuff. And I got rid of the worst stuff before, but hundreds and hundreds of paintings, of physical paintings, not digital, but physical, that were just so bad. And I've even had people saying, you should have given it to me. I would have loved to have had a wheelchair. Not these that I'm talking about. These were the so bad stuff that I did for magazines, decades ago, that were just
one of those magazines that had 26,000 circulation. Right?
Yeah.
It just barely made the cut.
Oh, they were so bad. But I had to do those. And I think everybody has different numbers. Some people, I think I had more bad paintings in me than most. But either way, you've got to be doing a large body of work in order to
I
get
could see
good.
that. I could see how you'd have.
I had a ton.
No. It's so, I can't, looking at your stuff now, it's like, it's hard to believe that there was that phase in your career where, like, you have such a strong style, you have such a command of color and just working digitally, to know that you were once a traditional painter and that's all you did.
Yeah.
Like,
And did it
it's
poorly.
crazy. I think that's something I've been thinking about too. This is so totally tangential, but if you're young, if you're in your 20s right now and you're figuring out, what am I going to do? You have so much time ahead of you, so many years. And if you're smart about it and you're putting in the work and the time, you could have 3 different careers.
Mm-hmm.
You could have a career as an illustrator and then transition into 3D art and then transition into sculpting, something like that. And there's just so much opportunity now for people who have somewhat of a vision, can execute, and have good work ethic, I think you'll be fine.
Yeah.
I know Lee was telling us he's got construction going on, full on construction now. There's a jackhammer.
Pleading text going, I'm still here, but
I'm here, guys. I just have to be under the radar for a little bit. You're lucky. Get whatever words you want in now, because I'm going to stop talking for a little bit.
Did you want to add anything to Fiverr while it's quiet?
I don't like it.
Okay. I don't like it.
I don't like it.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up. I think we filled our time and hopefully did something valuable to someone out there. So I'm going to take us out unless there's anything else you guys want to add. Okay.
Well, there's one thing that this podcast is sponsored by some random company. You want to talk about who that is?
Yeah. Like always, 3-Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLearn.com, where Becoming a Great Illustrator starts. If you're wanting to pursue a career in illustration, or if you're just wanting to level up as an artist, do check out the courses on there. You could try it out, kick the tires for free for a certain amount of time when you sign up. And if it is something that you're into and you're learning and you're getting any sort of value out of it, the subscription is not not bad. I think it's $29 a month for access to over 80 different courses, access to our foundations, which are like this hand-picked curriculum to help you build a portfolio that can get you work. So go over to svslearn.com, check it out. And there's a bunch of cool stuff for people who become subscribers that is available only to subscribers. One in particular we've been talking a lot about lately is Critique Arena. And we just finished up. Critique Arena is where we do a prompt every month and people get to submit illustrations based on that prompt. And then we pick, out of all those submissions, we pick 16 to be in a final, like a bracket competition. And then the subscribers to SVS Learn come to Critique Arena and they actually vote who moves up, who wins. So we put 2 illustrations next to each other. We critique both of them. And then you as a subscriber get to pick which one wins out of those 2. And we narrow it down each bracket until there's 2 left. And then those 2 get they've got a portfolio piece now they can add to their portfolio that's vetted by professional illustrators and the community. And 2, we give them a job offer to do an illustration for our podcast. So if you go to svslearn.com and click on podcasts, you can see all the illustrations done by past winners of Critique Arena. And we just did this just in December, we did Critique Arena All-Stars. So we took all the winners from the previous Critique Arenas and had them challenge each other to see who the best of the best was. And that was really cool to see how that how that panned out. Anyways, your hosts to this podcast have been Will Terry, Lee White, and Jake Parker. Go follow us on Instagram. Will Terry can be found at Will Terry Art. Lee White can be found at Lee White Illo, and I can be found at Jake Parker. And you could also visit our websites. Will Terry's website is willterry.com. Lee White is leewhiteillustration.com, and mine is mrjakeparker.com. All right, podcast is produced by Daniel Tu. That's Daniel TU, and you can find him at daniel2.co. And our SVS Learn is also produced, or I guess our producer manager at SVS Learn, want to acknowledge him, is David Broad. Go check out his work at, what is his website? davidbroad.com. Google him. Check him out. He's a great photographer. And lastly, Lisa Fott. Special thanks to her for all of her social media work that she does to help spread the word about SVS Learn. So that's it. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you next time.